Has someone ever challenged you to something that they didn't know who are an expert at? If so, how did it turn out for you, them? I was out skating in my driveway one day practicing a difficult trick. For me, over a 6-inch tall board. I had it on its side trying to land the trick from only 6 inches in height, and I kept screwing it up for a good hour. I was trying to land a 360 heel flip, and I always had trouble with that trick cause I skate goofy. To begin with, my neighbor must have been watching because he comes out, grabs the board I'm jumping over and turns it on its side so now it's 2 feet tall. He pulls $100 bill out of his wallet and says, "If you can jump over the board and land it, then I'll give this to you." What he didn't know is that I was shitty at the trick I was practicing. But among my skater friends, I was known for my ridiculous ollie height. I'm not very tall, but I could put my knees to my chest in a jump and clear 30 inches regularly. So I took the bet. Backed way off, took a running start, cleared the board, stuck the landing and came to a screeching sideways stop about 6 inches from him. He knew he got played and just laughed while he gave me the money. Good thing too, cause I needed a new deck right then pretty badly. Mine's kind of dumb, but I think it still counts. At work I'm kind of the Google Sheets expert, and I make lots of tools for different departments to use. Enter new guy, who needed to collect, aggregate and display a bunch of data. My boss was like, "Send Wish a calendar invite so you can tell her what you want and she'll set it up for you." New guy was having none of that and insisted he was going to do it himself. Well, a week later, he finally has this shitty sheet that doesn't have half the information we need. And we have to have the numbers for the state by tomorrow. So my boss asks me to fix it and you guys like, "Yeah, okay, that's not really possible. This is as good as it's going to get." 2 hours later, I send them both a fully functional and automated sheet that does everything we need. And we'll be able to use it indefinitely. Which means next time, and every time, the stupid state report is due, it will already be done. New guy was like, "I would have added that in if I'd had more time." A buddy mine was at a concert in bad seats and started complaining about it via Twitter. All of a sudden the band starts reading some tweets and calls my friend up to sit on stage for a couple songs. They sit him at the piano and during the next song, they jokingly go, "Okay, piano solo." The crowd laughs for a second but then my buddy just starts jamming out as he plays piano in his band. Talk about dream moment, getting to play with your favorite band. I once went to a museum with my sister and her friend, who I hadn't met before. We got to the Greek art bit and her friend started telling me how she was super into Greek myth. And I thought that was cool, because I was, unbeknownst to her, doing a master's in it at the time and also keeping a blog of myth retellings, which was pretty popular, and it was a relief to have something in common with this stranger. She then got weirdly haughty and told me she probably knew more myths than I did. So, being polite, I didn't challenge her on it and just asked her to tell me her favorite, so that we could have a conversation about it. She proceeded to tell me the myth of Daedalus and the Minotaur. I asked her how she'd heard of that one, because it's fairly obscure. She told me she'd read it on a viral blog post on a blog about mythology. It was my blog. My uncle challenged Jack Nicklaus to a golf game in college, without a clue. The humiliation burns him to this day. I once challenged a girl who was a friend to foosball, not knowing she grew up with a table in her house and older brothers. I even, jokingly, put money on the game. Well, I learned a bit about humility that night. The icing on the cake was when she drove me to an ATM to get her the money. Basketball. I'm a very unassuming looking guy. 5 feet 8 inches, 150 pounds. Not a tattoo to be found. But back in the day, I was pretty athletic and could hang in games with fringe D1, semi-pro guys. But I can't emphasize how much I didn't look like it at all. Anyway, in college, hanging out in someone's room, it came up that I play a bit and some dude I didn't know started running his mouth about how he could destroy me. Just wouldn't stop talking. I gave him every out, until it basically became personally offensive. Other guys were a bit tired of this asshole hanging around, and they knew I could play. So we all trooped over to the gym, late as fuck in the dead of winter, so we could settle things. 11-0 the first game. Not sure if we played after that, but I remember it was 11-0 because I made sure to not let the guy score. And I'm a pretty mellow guy and usually would have laid off and let him score a couple when it was clear that I was better. But this guy was a real asshole. So I just clamped down on him start to finish. I blocked a ton of his shit. He stopped hanging around nearly as much after that. So I was kind of a hero to the rest of the guys. Like St. Patrick. Drove that snake out of our nation. While I'd never claim I was an expert, I used to be pretty damn good at pool. My aunt and uncle had a pool table downstairs and my parents, for a variety of reasons, would go over regularly and spend all day there. There was nothing else for us, me and my brother, to do, so we just played pool all day for years. Eventually we got bored and saw that he had a book on trick shots, so we started doing that for fun. Never really mastered them, but they made for really good practice in understanding how to get the ball to do what you want. So anyway, for my buddy's 20th birthday he wanted to go to a pool hall and invited a ton of people. Then he told me it was going to be a tournament, drinks for individual games, and a 50-50 type of deal for the winner. He gets half regardless because it was his birthday. Insisted I come and I caved eventually. Get there. First game. They break, and that was the only shot they got. Rest of mine were pretty similar. At the end I just looked at him. Told you not to invite me. Found out after that a bunch of them had never even played pool before. Felt pretty bad, so I took the money and bought everyone drinks with it. Not me, but my brother and best friend. We were in Baltimore for a baseball weekend in 2009 and hanging out at a bar across from Camden Yards. They had a Silver Strike bowling video game. At our local bar back in Boston we had one as well. I'm decent at the game, but my brother and buddy were fucking amazing at this game. Bowling 300 games and whatnot. So two dudes are playing this game and drinking. We ask them if we can play when they're done. They ask if we want to play them. We said sure. My brother and buddy destroy these guys. Like it wasn't even close. These dudes said it was a fluke and they wanted a rematch, but this time for a round of beers. Again, Annihilation City. But they kept wanting to play, to eventually win a game. No lie. After 13 rounds of beers they finally gave up. They were great guys. We saw them the next day at the same bar and they walked up to us with beers in hand were already in. Said rematch. To this day we still hang out with him whenever we go to Baltimore. And to this day, they have never won. A neighbor on my block in Brooklyn challenged me to a pizza bake-off. I recently catered pizza for my daughter's school and word got around the neighborhood my pizza was pretty darn good. My first thought was, this guy's a Brooklyn native. My pizza will be shite compared to his. but there was something about him bragging that I couldn't resist the challenge. He talked up how pizza was in his blood, how his dad ran the pizza place around the corner years ago. I remained silent and let my skills answer for themselves. I got a buddy to let us use one of Baker's Pride ovens at his restaurant. We even had total strangers try our pizzas. Every last person chose my pizza over his. I never mentioned to him that I've worked in pizza places almost every day for the last 30 years. I never mentioned that when I'm not working at a pizza place I'm making pizzas at home at least once every 2 days. I never mentioned that at 9 years old I knew that I wanted to be a pizza man. Here I am 45 and getting ready to start my own pizza business. My office announced a laser tag team building event. 2 weeks after I played in the laser tag Ultrazone National Championships, which were an actual thing in 1997. When working as a teacher I beat a lot of students in Pokemon battles, cause they didn't think of me being like 15 years ahead of them in fighting experience. Noobs. Not a physical challenge, but I sell building materials for a living. Think Home Depot, but for guys that build skyscrapers and stadiums. There has been many occasions where an old man with zero construction knowledge tries to lecture me on what I do for a living. I would never go as far to say that I'm a fencing expert, but I have been fencing casually for about 5 years total, and consider myself pretty good for someone who's casual. A new person came to our fencing practice and demanded of a few men that we do a King of the Hill style match-up. I couldn't tell exactly what it was, but I could smell the toxic behavior rolling off of him when everyone declined, but he continued to insist we do it. He somehow fixated on me, and I decided I'd give it a go on a normal 15-point bout. Initially I always fence one style, in order to test out my opponent before switching to a style to trump theirs. So the first few points I see him cheering himself on as he established a 1 to 2 point lead, by 4 to 2 in his favor. I already figured out all the flaws in his fencing style, and proceeded to get the next 10 points without losing one round. I could see the guy fuming at the end when I beat him 15 to 5. It was a good feeling. My landlord tried blaming me for damage to the kitchen cabinets, but didnt know that I'm in construction and am very familiar with home building codes. They placed the cabinets too close to the stove and the glue that held the laminate had melted. For reference, this is clay pigeon shooting, kinda known as trap in the South. Well, I'm from a rural area and not exactly super southern, so when I'd go to other trap fields to practice different conditions, there's always be a smart ass or two try and place a bet with me. This is definitely an old money sport, with some of the guns going upwards of $5,000. I had an old BT-100 that we got in a trade for lead shot and some cash on the side. While not cheap, it was still much lower than other people's guns, and people would take that as me being a newbie. They'd learn pretty quick though, since the team I was one went to the nationals almost every year from 11 to 18. It was always funny because some would be good sports but others would throw an absolute fit. I saw a guy damage a 10,000 per at sea because someone else beat to him before. Even funnier part is there was a guy from the county next to us who could blow us out of the water. And he always shot with an 870 pump from Walmart. When I was around 10, there was an old man with Alzheimer's in my neighborhood who would often approach my friends and I. He would ask us questions that we obviously didn't know the answer to, such as what's the square root of 2? which was one of his favorites. One day I decided I'd memorize the square root of 2 to 20 digits. Sure enough, he did ask me the question again and I was totally prepared. He was extremely impressed and of course he forgot who I was, so would continue to ask over and over again. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe for more content.